It's a new year, and we're continuing our series on getting more out of the year that is ahead of us. My name is Dan. I'm one of the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm with Josh Brahm, who's our executive producer and the president of the Equal Rights Institute. Josh, we started off our conversation a couple of days ago on just trying to make this year a little better, a little more forward progress.
I was telling everyone who texted me Happy New Year's, this became my thing, was like, 2025 has to be better than 2024. Okay, it has to be.
Yeah, it has to be.
So,
and
yay! Happy New Year.
Part of that is what we plan for it to be too. And
yes,
and so and that's the thing I like about January, even though it's in the dead of winter and it's dark. It is a season where we look to the future and say, hey, let's make this year a little different. It's a pause, all right, for the busy, chaotic holidays. And say, okay, and I don't know about you, but by the end of the holidays, I'm ready to get back to the rhythm of life. I'm ready to,
usually, I'm in a sort of a place of like exhaustion right now, so I'm not completely identifying with that. But in general, yes, there's kind of you want to kind of just get back to normal and have things be more predictable and all that.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, we talked about making a plan, talked about the categories, including the spiritual, financial, personal, professional, and family categories. So the third thing that I want to kind of emphasize is this. We all of us have a tendency to get out of balance if we're not careful. So I would say strategically seek balance.
Yes.
It's okay to play.
Yes.
At the same time, you also need to do a few hard things. If your whole life is spent on recreation and entertainment and playing, then what are you accomplishing on the other side of that? I think a lot of our lives and a lot of our energy, for some people, not everybody, is spent avoiding hard things. And sometimes we got to embrace hard things.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to go back to school. It's a hard thing to read a book for some people. It's a hard thing to meet somebody new. It's a hard thing to accomplish a spiritual discipline. But in the end, sometimes the hard things are really the important things.
Yeah.
At the same time,
how do you balance those?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish you'd tell me.
No.
Because I'm the person, I feel guilty if I'm resting.
Yeah, me too. So I think maybe you and I are both on a maybe even, I don't want to say early on a journey. I'm at least earlier a journey.
Earlier than Dan, for sure.
I'm definitely earlier than Dan on this journey of trying to figure out rest and how to have a more balanced life. I sort of had to, and we won't get into the details right now, but I sort of, by necessity of my job, had to spend a couple of really hard years working, and I need to not keep doing that. So it's kind of like that can't become the forever, the new normal.
Yeah, but what you just said is
seek balance.
Yeah, it's super important, because what we do is we normalize the unhealthy.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Yeah, and escaping the unhealthy sometimes feels unhealthy because it feels abnormal.
Yes, because now I'm resting and I'm mad about it. I'm mad that it is not instantly fixing everything, even if I've only rested for like 2 days, and if I was sick for both of those. Like I clearly have some stuff that needs to get kind of fixed in my head that has maybe gotten a little bit like cross-wired in the last couple of years of ministry work. And I'm on that journey and trying to figure it out, and I'm going to hopefully be a lot more wise about it in a year than I am like right now.
Well, and I think that's part of maturing, a part of getting older. And it's smarter if you can figure it out yourself and do it than to have either your bad habits bear fruit or God slow you down or something. In my case, for instance, for years I'd go on 5-6 hours of sleep. I was constantly tired or whatever, and then I had a heart attack, and it's no longer an option to make sure I'm rested. And so it provided somewhat of an excuse to say, you know what, I'm not going to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, or I'm going to try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, because that's what my body is requiring at this stage of my life. And that's okay.
Yeah. One of the things I've also learned is that it's important for me to pay attention to the wise people that are in my life. So functionally everyone who knows me and cares about me has been all telling me kind of the same thing, to slow down. So that's when, if I am in an unbalanced, unhealthy kind of place, or my compass isn't pointing north in this area, then it becomes easier to be able to then really lean in on, okay, I'm just going to have to trust. It's really humbling, but just really trust. Okay, apparently all of you know better than me, so I need to just trust, like, this is what my wife says I need to do, and I'm just going to do that, even if it doesn't feel like a ministry rock star that I want to be or whatever,
And isn't it sad, but it's very common that crisis creates the desire for change for a lot.
Yes.
And it's almost, change by necessity because we have worked ourselves into a crisis.
Yeah.
And I've done that multiple times in my ministry. And then it's like, oh yeah, well, maybe these people weren't idiots after all. Or maybe I'm not so special, which is another thing,
maybe it's like we all have to come face to face with our own mortality or humanity or something like that. My body's not working as well now, and so just recognizing that and recognize, okay, there might have been a time when I could have worked those kinds of hours or had that many meetings a day or something. There may have been a time when I could have done that, but that's not right now. And so how do I try to figure out what is healthy and balanced for me like this year?
Yeah.
Is a lot of what I'm doing.
Yep. Well, let me go to the fourth one. That's identify available time. Because this is what I don't have time to. How many times have I used that?
Right.
I don't have time to plan. I don't have time to rest. I don't have time to take a vacation. I don't have time to do these things I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's a lie.
Yeah.
Every single person on this planet gets the exact number of hours in a day as the next person. Nobody gets more. And yet we know that some people live lives of healthy balance and other people live lives of frantic chaos.
Yeah.
It's how we use the time we have. And so one of the steps to using your time more wisely in the year to come and getting more out of the year to come is to understand how your clock works, so to speak. So I've listed a couple of areas. Number one is simply know your work rhythms. Know your some people can get by on 6 hours of sleep and feel like $1 million. Some people require 8 or 9. And it's different in the different phases of your life. A baby sleeps 12, 14 hours a day, perhaps. A teenager sleeps 12, 14 hours of sleep. But probably in your 30s, you're not going to get 12 to 14 hours of sleep. But then when you get older, every time you sit down, you fall asleep.
Yeah.
So there are natural rhythms. Thankfully, I married a night person. In the evenings, I often get a second wind, which works really well for me because I'm a professor on the side.
Yeah.
And I come home from work, I eat dinner. Sometimes I fall asleep in my chair for 10 minutes, get a power nap, and then I'm good to go for another 3 or 4 hours, during which time I do my schoolwork.
See, this is complicated for me because I'm a little bit envious of that, and yet I'm also, maybe it's really good that I'm not able to do that because I am.
Are you a morning person?
Yeah, I'm more of a morning person.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the thing is this: many times we criticize people who aren't like us. Once again,
right?
If you're like my son-in-law gets up every morning at between 3 and 4 o'clock.
Oh.
And
That's a
goes
different thing,
to the
though.
gym and works out for 2 hours before
God
he starts
bless
work.
those people.
They're lunatics. But the other thing is, 8 o'clock, he's in bed.
Yeah.
He's in bed.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm starting job number 2. Is he right and I'm wrong? Am I right and he's wrong? No.
Nope.
It's just a difference in how we're wired.
Yeah.
And he's as successful in accomplishing his goals as I am in mine. We're just doing it at different times. So recognize that. Quit, again, comparing and competing with the people around you. Just know your rhythms.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think it's really important that we look for waste.
Yes.
And I think our generation is wasting more time than we want to admit.
Yes.
So if you want to, you have a good accountability partner when they say, show me your online time for last week. And they'll say, well, I don't know. And I've been doing better. I say, no. Pick up your stinking phone, open settings, go to time you were online because it shows every app and how long you spent on in the last week.
Yeah.
And show that to me.
Yeah.
Most of the time they'll absolutely refuse to do it because they know.
Yeah.
But if you are spending 10, 12, 14 hours on social media, video games, and doom scrolling reels and TikTok, you got plenty of time. You've got a different problem.
Yeah.
And
it's a prioritization thing.
Yeah. Well, it's also an addiction thing. And by the way, lest I sound too pious, there have been times when I would lay down to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and it'd be 1 o'clock and I'm looking just one more Instagram
I've
reel.
done that too.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I call it doom scrolling. That's the common term for it.
Yep.
And every time you hit one and it makes you smile or you get a little drip of dopamine or endorphin of some kind.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you click, well, just one more. Just one more. Just one more.
Even if you just zoom into the work day, like if you're working a 9 to 5, Most people are stunned the first time they ever do actual time tracking, if they ever do it. And there's really good like apps and software for this now. I was using Toggle for a while. It's fantastic. It's got widgets and it's just like really easy. Just like you just literally just push the button. This is the category I'm in, and then just do your thing. And that was really helpful for a while for me to realize, oh wow, here's where there's a lot of waste, or here's parts of the day that are where is wasteful. I don't do that right now. That would probably be triggering me the wrong direction and trying to get me to be like too productive. So I stopped doing that for a while. But I think everyone should spend at least a couple of weeks like really doing time tracking every minute of your day, all the different things that you're doing, at least with your work, so you can take a look and see how long does it actually take for some of these things to happen.
Yeah, we talk about working an 8-hour a day. We're probably more like working a 4 or 5 hour a day with a bunch of nonsense in it.
Yes.
And again, there needs to be some social lubrication that happens, when you go to lunch with somebody or share a cup of coffee. But one of the big killers, I saw some research, I didn't keep it. I wished I had. But how much time people spend in the bathroom now versus before we had cell phones.
Oh, really?
I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a public restroom, like at an airport or someplace, and I can hear people listening to stuff on YouTube or whatever, TikTok, while they're supposed to be doing their business, which is really crude. But I mean, let's be honest, that's what's going on. Right. And the amount of time we're spending on the porcelain throne because we take our phones in there has increased. So you stop and you say, okay, well, it's not that much time. It's 10 minutes twice a day. Okay, 20 minutes times 7 days a week. Now we're talking about 3.5 hours, and you talk about that every month. And now you're talking about, 15 or 20 hours and then every year, and you're wasting weeks of your life.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's just taking your phone into the bathroom with you.
Yeah. And then a secondary thing that can happen.
By the way, do you remember when you go into your grandma's house and there was Reader's Digest on the back of the toilet? Yeah.
Yes.
That doesn't happen anymore, does it?
I kind of missed all the Reader's Digest that my grandmother had back in the day. A secondary thing that can have that was happening for me sometimes if I was doom scrolling in the bathroom was there's also having like an effect on me emotionally, especially like with all the political news that was going on for a while. So something that I did recently, I haven't been completely consistent. Okay, I'm not that awesome, but a shift that I have made is I'm spending a lot of that time now just in the Kindle app reading a book. Yeah, because it's very controlled. If you decide I am only going to open this book that I'm reading, I'm not going to social media. I'm not going to Reddit. I'm not going to YouTube. I'm not like any of that stuff. I'm just going to read this book that I've already decided I ought to read, and I should spend more time reading. Like, then that's more controlled, and you get a lot more reading done.
Which is part of why we're doing this episode, because you identified a problem.
Yep.
You determined a solution.
Yep.
You implemented that, and you discipline yourself to keep it.
Yep.
And that's what you're required to have accomplishments, to get more out of this year than you did last year. And I think that's a big deal. Here's another thing. You mentioned the Kindle thing, and this is something I did years ago, and we carry it in our pockets now, but reclaim unproductive time. Yeah. So, I give blood regularly. I have to go to get my blood checked every so often because of my health issues. And doctors almost always are behind schedule. I mean, even when I go to the Red Cross to get blood, sometimes I'll sit there and wait for 20 minutes. I have a choice at that time to scroll Facebook or whatever, or I could open my Kindle app. And reclaiming that unproductive time. Driving for me, again, we can listen to music, we can listen to podcasts, or we can listen to a book. Yeah. Yep. I've got a friend who probably knocks out 40 or 50 books a year, but he does it while he's traveling. Yeah. He does it in his car, on airplanes, all this kind of stuff. And he just disciplines himself to listen to the books on audio. So reclaiming unproductive time by having right habits, and then the art of multitasking. For instance, I save all my phone calls for when I get in the car. And as soon as my car connects to my phone, I start with my first phone call. And you say, well, it's not healthy for driving. Well, I don't know. Is it any less or more healthy than listening to a podcast?
You're hands-free. I'm not worried about you talking to someone. If you talk to someone next to you, it's not really that different.
Not at all. So with that in mind, these are just some things that you can reclaim some valuable time. I want to go to the other one, though, and say this. And I'm trying to alternate between hard ones and easy ones, hard ones and easy ones. Cool. But the next thing is absolutely leave borders. So don't don't schedule yourself so tightly that you don't have any free time.
Yeah.
That you don't have any spare time.
Yeah.
So I get the borders idea from when I used to be a school teacher 40 years ago, before there were word processors and computers. And every month I had my students write a book report. I want them to read 9 books through the course of the year.
Nice.
And so they would have to write, and they did it in longhand. In cursive. I made them very cursive. Can you believe that? I was such a tyrant.
Well, you were so mean.
But I would have a few students in every class that would start not at the little red lines on the paper, but they would start at the edge of the paper and work all the way through. And it would drive me nuts because I had no place to write my comments.
Oh, you wanted a nice thick margin.
I wanted a margin on the right and on the left, at the top and on the
Your
bottom.
red pen.
And then I could write my comments, and it would drive me crazy when they did. And you know what? God wants to write in the margin of our lives.
Ooh,
And
I wasn't expecting you to just like suddenly drop a really heavy theological truth.
Jesus juking everybody now. But no, seriously, there needs to be these times where we can engage with God, where we can hear from him, where we can spend time with people who love him, that will sharpen us and challenge us and question us and share with us, or that we can share with them, iron sharpening iron. But if we look at every moment as having to have something that we think is productive, we will never have any margins in our lives. Yeah. If you schedule where you don't have any downtime, where you don't have a day off, where you don't take your vacation time, then we think that sounds noble. I haven't had a vacation in 4 years. Well, in what other areas are you an idiot? We ought to be asking that question. And again, I am so guilty of this.
Yeah.
But so
that's really good.
So going to number 6 is something that you did, which you talked about. Maybe you can give us some ideas. But the idea of a daily to-do list. How do you do yours?
So I like this app called Todoist, but I'm nerdy and apps that are useful to me sometimes and helping me. But it's on my computer, it's on my phone. I've got categories. You can prioritize things. I think the key to something like that, if you're going to do something that's not pen and paper, is it needs to be easy. Mm-hmm. You don't want to fall into the trap of spending a whole bunch of time in another app or something like that. Like, that's not the point. The point of this is just to kind of like if a task comes to my mind or something that I need to do later, I want to be able to quickly enter it into this thing, and it's basically, and I can quickly tag it and prioritize it, set a due date. I can add comments and anything if I need to, but usually within like 10 seconds, I can basically have put in this thing and it'll show up later for me.
What was the name of that app again?
Todoist. But there's a lot of people that use like different kinds of apps like this. I need to pull up his name. I've got a YouTuber I'm going to recommend who's amazing at time management stuff. So if people are looking to try to get better at that, there's this guy, Carl Pullein. Pullein. And he is just really, really great at understanding how to do calendaring well and how to do schedule well and how to be productive and efficient, but not go overboard. His videos have been really inspiring to me.
I'm thanks for those suggestions. I wrote them down because this is an area that I think every once in a while I need to revisit. So when I was in my 20s and I became a new school principal and I was just overwhelmed, I went to an all-day seminar from some guy who was an expert on time management. And I got to tell you, it's one of there have been 2 things that seminars I've gone to, and one was a course I took that have revolutionized my life. One was I took an Evelyn Wood speed reading course. Revolutionized my life. And 40 years later, I'm still using it. And then the other one was a time management course. So today we've got YouTube. You don't have to put your pants on to be able to be educated on it. So go right for those kind of things. But take the time to do this. This is where I learned to become an advocate and user of the to-do list, because it has focused me, and it has prevented me, not always, but it has moved me in the right direction so that I'm not doing the urgent, I'm doing the important.
Yes. And that is so hard if you're not planning ahead of time. So I'm old school still, maybe not after I get the Todoist app, but I've for years used a whiteboard. Yeah, I think those are great.
Many years I used the daytime. There was a system called Daytimers, and so I would carry this little leather portfolio in, and it had a calendar, and I had a to-do list on the left side, and the first thing I would do in the morning is check my to-do list for what I need to do. And the last thing I did at night was to do my to-do list for the next day because everything was still fresh.
Yeah.
The feeling of accomplishment to be able to cross through those things was huge for me. And every day I had an opportunity to reprioritize the next day because some things, I don't know that I ever have gotten all 10 or 20 things done, but some of them weren't that important. And so they would languish. I kept folders on projects I was doing. I had a green one, a yellow one, and a red one. Green one was the things I could not go home unless I did these. Yellows was I had to do this week or the world was going to burn down. Red one was if you have time, let's get to these someday. And my secretary, I'd write them down. She'd flop them and I'd say green, yellow, red. Now, again, today we've got all kinds of tools. We don't have to do that, even though I sometimes like to use the old archaic methods. The bottom line is have a system that allows you to focus what you should be giving your attention to.
What are like the three most important things you can do that
make
are
that
not
number
urgent,
1, 2, and 3,
and make those like at least like if you get a lot of your best work done in the morning, like I do, then it's like try to not do a lot of meetings in the morning, and try to like what is the thing that you maybe want to procrastinate on, and or like what is the hardest thing, and just get that done kind of first thing in the day, and that can really make
the other thing too easier. Is and when you use your to-do list with your calendar, you can also calendar work on my to-do list. These 3 hours work on my to-do list, which is what I've had to learn to do, particularly as a pastor when you have a lot of people who want to have time with you.
Set a meeting with yourself.
And say, I'm sorry, I'm already scheduled that hour or that evening or that lunch or whatever you need, and then live and die by your calendar, and usually have someone help you manage your calendar. That also helps as well. Last thing for today, and that is simply this, and again, trying to go every other one, keep the Sabbath. You've heard me use this illustration before, but I'm going to keep pounding at it.
Please do.
And it is this. If I were to tell you I'm committing adultery, you'd have a problem with that. If I said I'm a chronic liar, you'd have a problem with that. If I said I murdered somebody last week, you'd have a problem with that. If I cursed out my parents, you'd say I have a problem with that. And at the same time, I'd say, you know what? I've gone 4 weeks and haven't taken a day off. You'd say, wow. I'm impressed. What a hard worker
That's
you
our
are.
society.
Yeah. And yet it's as much one of the 10 commandments as all the others are.
Yeah.
And yet we somehow think, oh, well, God didn't really mean that one. Well, if there's some that he didn't mean, I'm going to pick a different one than that one because I'd like an exemption from a few of the others. But the bottom line is this. It is not noble. It is not spiritual. It is not healthy for us to ignore something that God has so clearly put into black and white for us. It's one of the preliminary lists of Scripture, one of the prominent lists of Scripture in the 10 Commandments where he says, take a day, rest, and focus on me. And, it became for the Pharisees, and it became for even some in the Christian church laborious. It became legalistic. I don't think that's what God had in mind for it.
No.
But at the same time, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We ought to have a day of the week where we can be restored, reflect, relax, rejuvenate, a bunch of R words.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy. I think it pleases God.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for us because it's always a good thing to obey God. So, all right, we're out of time again, Josh.
Yeah,
thanks so much, man. I love chatting with you and keeping this up. So,
good.
Anyway, as always, we want to say thanks for listening to us here at Life Talks, and we'll be back next week with some more episodes. But until then, thanks as always for listening to us at Life Talks.